Greg Kelly here for Colonial Metals Group. They nailed every call on gold's explosive rally, beating the S&P 500, NASDAQ, and even Bitcoin. And now they're warning the next surge is already underway. Get their free gold guide now at freegoldguide.com or call 800-655-5186. That's 800-655-5186. Learn how to move your savings into physical gold, 100% tax-free. freegoldguide.com.
$1 million, free to play. You just need to survive. It's the Fanatics NFL Survivor Pool. Pick one team to win each week. Get it right, move on. Get it wrong, you're out. The last fan standing take home a guaranteed $1 million cash prize. And for every player who joins, we add $1 to the pot, up to $10 million. The Fanatics NFL Survivor Pool. Play free on the Fanatics app. App access open to all. Must be 21 plus and joined by 9/8 to play. No purchase necessary, U.S. only, void where prohibited. Subject to complete terms. See fanatics.com/game rules.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Well, as you may have read or heard, President Donald Trump fired Lisa Cook, the member of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, when he learned that Cook had engaged actively in mortgage fraud. Very specifically, Cook claimed that her home in Ann Arbor, Michigan, was her primary legal residence. That gave her a state tax break, a superior mortgage rate, and a lower insurance rate. And then just 2 weeks later, she claimed that a home outside of Atlanta was her primary legal residence. Once again, she got a state tax break, a lower mortgage rate, and a lower insurance rate. And now we learn that Lisa Cook, the Fed board governor, had a third residence in Cambridge, Massachusetts, that in some years, she said on her taxes were an investment property, but in other years, she said it was a second home. Those, of course, both get different tax treatment depending on which one it is. So Cook, in response to this firing by President Trump, filed a lawsuit in the District of Columbia, and that lawsuit was assigned to Judge Gia Cobb. We can now tell you right here in the Stone Zone exclusively that we have learned that Gia Cobb, who is an African-American woman, as is Lisa Cook, are both members of the same sorority, Delta Sigma Theta. The chances that the D.C. clerk of the courts, Angela D. Caesar, or I should say referred this case randomly to Gia Cobb, are approximately 0. By the way, Angela Caesar, the clerk of the D.C. courts, has been criticized previously for assigning cases to anti-Trump judges. Judge Jed Boasberg got an improbable number of the most important cases to the Trump administration. Congressman Jim Jordan has complained about this. I think it's time to send the clerk, Angela Caesar, a subpoena to come up to the House Oversight Committee, or Judiciary Committee in this case, to explain herself. Now, why should you care about this? Here's why. Right now, Jerome Powell, who is the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, is insisting that it's not a good time to cut interest rates. That's strange because the two criteria that he's supposed to use for cutting interest rates, or considering the cutting of interest rates, are the rate of inflation and the rate of unemployment. Well, right now, contrary to what all the pointy-headed establishment economists in Washington and New York predicted, the economy is particularly strong. They said that if Donald Trump hard bargained for more aggressive tariff deals in which we made trade agreements with our trading partners that were good for us as well as good for them, rather than just being good for them, well, the economists and the so-called experts insisted that the economy would crash, that inflation would rage out of control, unemployment would soar, the stock market would crash, and of course, none of those things has happened. In fact, the rate of inflation and the rate of unemployment today are either at the same rate or lower than they were the last 4 times the Federal Reserve cut interest rates on the American people. That means when you go to borrow money personally or for a business, or when you go to pay off your credit card, or when you go to buy a car or a house, you would pay a lower interest rate. That's why you should care, because today, as long as Lisa Cook is on the Federal Reserve, there is a 5-4 vote against cutting interest rates. One of the board governors, Governor Waller, gave a speech yesterday, terrific speech, in which he outlined precisely why today is the time to cut interest rates on the American people. So I think it is vitally important that President Trump's lawyers move aggressively, since he was sued by Lisa Cook to disqualify this judge. It is absolutely clear that she has a conflict of interest. The fact that she and Lisa Cook both belong to the same very exclusive black women's sorority is reason enough for her to be recused. The Trump Justice Department released their rebuttal to former Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook's lawsuit, alleging that she's entitled to the job no matter how corrupt she may be, essentially because of the color of her skin. Cook retained the notoriously sloppy and, I would say, ill-fated lawyer, Abbe Lowell. I know Abbe Lowell. I remember when he represented Senate Majority Leader in New York, Joe Bruno, a truly great man who was wrongfully charged with corruption. Bruno was convicted on all counts, but then the U.S. Supreme Court threw Bruno's conviction out, saying the law under which he'd been charged was flawed. And the Justice Department under Bill Clinton probably under Barack Obama, made the very unusual decision to retry Joe Bruno. Bruno fired Abbe Lowell, hired a better criminal defense lawyer, and he was acquitted on all counts. More recently, Abbe Lowell represented Hunter Biden. We know how that turned out. In any event, the rebuttal from President Trump's lawyers noted that Cook's improprieties regarding mortgages on her 2 homes are enough for President Trump to fire her, that he entitled to fire her on the basis of cause. Now, interestingly enough, I did a little research. 3 previous members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, Eric Rosengren, Richard Clarida, and Robert Kaplan, all resigned from the Federal Reserve Board when they were under federal investigation for improprieties. The rebuttal from Trump's lawyers said that not only does she not need to be convicted of a crime, but the president has full discretion to determine what causes. Describing the alleged mortgage fraud, the Trump Department of Justice wrote in their response, in both agreements entered to within weeks of each other, Dr. Cook represented that she would occupy each property as her principal legal residence. It is difficult, if it not impossible, to see how Dr. Cook could possibly have honestly represented that she intended to occupy and use both a property in Michigan and a condominium in Atlanta as her principal legal residence during the same period. The president need not prove criminal acts beyond a reasonable doubt to remove a principal officer. Also, interestingly, in her filing, Dr. Lisa Cook admits that she is a executive in the executive branch of government, meaning that the chief executive has the full authority to discharge her. So in other words, Cook is cooked. She's just hoping for an activist judge, an activist court in Washington, D.C. She may think that she got one in Judge Gia Cobb. But as I said previously, I believe Cobb will have to recuse herself when it is publicly revealed for the first time here in the Stone Zone that they are sorority sisters. Cook hopes the judge and jury ultimately will not rule out her motion, but even if the lower court, the district court in D.C., were to rule for Cook, which would not be unusual in the District of Columbia, where virtually every judge is a left-wing activist, would then go to a 3-judge panel of appeals even that will lean left, and therefore this may ultimately end up in front of the Supreme Court. Again, why should you care? Well, the interest rates that you pay could be determined on the basis of this case. Cook will continue to play the race card and probably even go on a speaking tour after she is inevitably fired in order to milk every dime she can out of playing the victim. How typical of the privileged, entitled DEI caste that shamelessly extracts undeserved money from our institutions. Personally, I'm in favor of DEI. That means deport every illegal, in my view. Meanwhile, Christian churches were targeted across the United States with violence or terrorism, a stunning 415 times in 2024, rising from 198 times in 2022. In the 4 years prior to 2022, a total of churches targeted with violence or terrorism actually never exceeded 100. The figures come from a report that I saw today by the Family Research Council entitled Hostility Towards Churches in the United States, analyzing the incidences from 2025. Early this week, we saw a transgender terrorist target a Catholic church in Minneapolis to murder children in cold blood. These instances are becoming far, far too normal. Whether it's a transgendered or a leftist or an Islamist, Christian churches are becoming more frequently targeted for violence, and the media is willing to look the other way. Or, even worse, use it to cause a drumbeat for gun control. Let me point out, Minnesota has among the most stringent and harshest gun control laws in the country. But if owning guns is made criminal, only criminals will have guns. We are commonly told that it is Christian or done by white people, and therefore it must be condemned. This is nonsense. The Founding Fathers were, in fact, white Christian influenced men, and they created the greatest nation the world has ever known. It is far past the time to start going on offensive against these enemies of civilization and humanity. Meanwhile, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, put leftists on blast after they took the opportunity to defame Christians in the aftermath of that transgendered mass shooting at a Catholic school earlier this week in Minneapolis. The director of the Office of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democrat congresswoman from Ohio, called out Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and former Biden press secretary Jen Psaki, in particular for the callous and insensitive remarks. Director Gabbard said, those like Jen Psaki and Jacob Frey who criticized prayers in the wake of Minneapolis' tragedy are expressing the same anti-God sentiment that motivated the shooter. He aimed his wrath at God by trying to stop people with his bullets from praying. Now it is a time for us to come together and join hands in prayer for the children who were killed, their loved ones, and those who survived this horrific shooting. It is repugnant to me that Jen Psaki and the mayor Jacob Frey essentially denigrated those who fell to their knees in prayer over this horrific tragedy in Minneapolis. I am first-hand living proof that Jesus Christ can do anything. After all, they tried to frame me in a Soviet-style show trial when I had actually really done nothing wrong. Oh, he lied about the Russian collusion. What Russian collusion? As Tulsi Gabbard has now proven, there was no Russian collusion. That was a canard cooked up, a fake narrative cooked up by Barack Obama and his criminal cabal. Thanks for tuning in to the Stone Zone with me, Roger Stone, right here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. We have more hot politics coming up for you on the other side, so please stay tuned and don't go away.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back in the Stone Zone. The Trump Justice Department is now investigating whether the FBI, during the Biden regime, attempted to destroy documents secretly and unlawfully to protect former FBI Director James Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan, according to the fake news New York Times, which, of course, is freaking out over the matter. This investigation was initiated after FBI Director Kash Patel found actual burn bags in a secret room at FBI headquarters. Because of ineptitude or sabotage, these crucial documents remained intact. It's a good thing because they tell us the actual story of the Russian collusion hoax. They contain pertinent details all about this criminal ruse. Former FBI Director Paul Abadi, who served under Biden and stepped down on January 20th when Trump was sworn into office, is being scrutinized as part of this investigation, along with other senior FBI officials who served under Biden. The Trump administration is doing their due diligence to figure out exactly who is responsible for the illegal acts when the Biden and the Obama regimes were in power. That list is voluminous, and when all is revealed, there may be thousands of individuals who will be facing charges with an exhausted amount of evidence demonstrating their guilt. I almost had to chuckle at watching former Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, who said that the raid on the home of John Bolton, very specifically because Bolton retained classified documents, which by law he's not entitled to have, tarnished the reputation of the FBI. Actually, nobody tarnished the reputation of the FBI worse than, well, Andrew McCabe and his boss, James Comey. Meanwhile, Comey is out talking about Taylor Swift. I think he's either delusional or maybe it's some kind of secret spy code. I haven't quite figured that out yet. Meanwhile, the state of Oklahoma has introduced an anti-woke certification test that is mandatory for teachers to pass before they are allowed around the precocious school children of the state of Oklahoma. Oklahoma reportedly has developed this America First test with the help of Prager University, a popular conservative education tool run by Dennis Prager to weed out the leftist subversives in academia. Oklahoma is offering a teaching bonus of up to $50,000 to any teacher across the nation with a serious resume who isn't a deranged leftist. Oklahoma is showing how it's done for states to set education policy. More right-minded families will be coming from other states as a result because they're unwilling to sacrifice their children's purity for a bizarre and distorted notion of equality. Federalism was designed to work in this manner as a laboratory for democracy where the best policies could be introduced in a decentralized fashion and then adopted in states across the country if those policies were successful. We must return to authentic federalism if we're going to make America great again for the long haul. Thanks for joining us here in the Stone Zone. Wherever you do, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back with more hot politics on the other side.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back in the Stone Zone. You know, you really can't make this stuff up. Young girls in California public schools are now being required to submit a mental health accommodation form if they are uncomfortable with going into the bathroom with transgendered boys and males. The Temecula Valley United School District is requiring that female students file this request, stigmatizing them for wanting privacy and not to be forced to share a bathroom with gender-bending freaks and other perverts. They're being forced to do this under a law meant to accommodate children with real conditions such as diabetes, epilepsy, and severe anxiety disorders. California State Superintendent candidate Sonia Shaw described the rules as pure madness, saying the girls are treated as the problem. This is upside down, dangerous, and exactly what we warned would happen. This is what California is devolving into under the failed leadership of Governor Gavin Newsom. He may talk big on social media, posturing as if he's some kind of tough guy or actually a successful governor, but in actuality, he's just a liberal freak who lacks the courage to defend the rights of little girls not to be harassed and made uncomfortable in their bathrooms. This is why he will never be president. All voters, even Democrats, sense that he's a phony and they desire authenticity rather than some sleazy plastic used car salesman that Gavin Newsom seems to personify. He is, by the way, one of the wealthiest people in the country. He's got great hair. Those are about the only two qualifications I can see in terms of his ability to become the Democrat nominee for president of the United States. Meanwhile, Democrats double down on their woke insanity. They're caught in a death spiral, and they're apparently incapable of reversing course, as evidenced by their crazy rhetoric during the recent Democrat National Committee meeting. During their summer meeting in Minnesota, a resolution was unanimously passed in support of the American values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. DNC chairman said that the Democrats must be prepared for a, quote, knife fight, close quote, and to stop playing by the rules as if the far-left Constitution-hating Democrats ever played by any rules. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison gave an impassioned speech in favor of transgendered rights. 0.8% of the people in America are transgendered, by the way. The DNC also declared the right to recognize Palestine as a nation, but had an Indian tribal speaker proclaim the illegitimacy of American colonialization over indigenous lands. Minnesota governor and failed vice presidential candidate and full-time freak Tim Walz called President Trump a fascist and stated that the party is not shying away from diversity as a strength and equity as a goal, and that inclusion being the air we breathe. God, it would be great if they nominated that guy for president, but I can't even believe that even the Democrats are that dumb. In short, the Democrats have learned nothing, or they're in too deep to turn back. I'm not sure which it is. They're being held hostage by their radicalized constituents who've been subjected to crazed propaganda for the last decade about Trump being a Russian agent, Trump being a fascist, and other lies designed to make them feel feral and unable to reason. They were too arrogant to believe that President Trump could make the greatest political comeback of the century, and now between a rock and a hard place, they really don't know what they stand for. In fact, they stand for nothing. This bodes well for Republican chances during next year's midterm elections. President Trump has come up with an interesting idea, which is a midterm Republican National Convention. It would be a great opportunity for him to showcase the incredible accomplishments of this administration. I saw former Senator Claire McCaskill on MSNBC the other night. She was ignominiously rejected by the people of Missouri. You wouldn't know that, the way they hold her in such an exalted position. She said that the Epstein scandal was a way for President Trump to distract from the collapsing economy. Wow, we have a record Dow. Inflation is at a historic low. The dollar is strong. Unemployment remains low. I'm not sure what economic collapse the former senator is talking about. Meanwhile, these recent high-profile mass shootings by transgendered individuals, most recently the target of the Catholic school in Minneapolis, are happening because the ideology and the movement itself is actively encouraging this violence. Minnesota's Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan, she makes Walz look like a moderate, was pictured wearing a Protect Trans Kids shirt that featured a knife on it. The implication is obvious. Those who oppose rights for transgender children, meaning giving them puberty blockers and prepping them for gender mutilation shortly after adolescence, deserve to be targeted with violence. Additional propaganda from transgender radicals includes slogans like death before detransition and trans rights or else, usually paired with depictions of rifles, guns, or knives. Of course, everyone deserves their Second Amendment rights. The founders wrote that those rights shall not be infringed for any reason, and those words are, in fact, ironclad. But transgenderism would no longer be looked at as a mental illness by those of us who have common sense. It should now be recognized as a terrorist threat. Christians are encouraged to be vigilant and to stand on guard because it is only a matter of time before one of these satanic, possessed, deranged maniacs will strike again. The other serious question, which doesn't seem to get asked, is all of these mass shootings, which are a relatively new phenomena here in America, when it comes to the shooters, how many of them are on psychotropic drugs? Why can't we ever get an answer to that question? How the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is the lone public official who's been asking that difficult question. It is one to which we really need an answer. Meanwhile, the Air Force is granting a military funeral with full honors for January 6th martyr Ashley Babbitt. She, of course, is the decorated Air Force veteran who was shot and killed in cold blood without warning and unarmed. She was menacing no one. This decision by the Undersecretary of the Air Force, Matthew Lohmeyer, noted that information has come forward that reversed a previous denial when it came to burying Babbitt with full military honors. Details such as suspected federal agent Ray Epps ginning people up at the Capitol on January 6th and law enforcement literally opening the doors from the inside have changed the narrative about January 6th, proving that it was, in fact, a setup, a Fedsurrection, and not a legitimate insurrection. That is, of course, not what Peter Baker of the New York Times writes, but then Peter Baker of the New York Times isn't a journalist. He is a crazed left-wing propagandist posing as a journalist. He actually sticks to the outdated narrative that this was some kind of insurrection. No, I was no one other than those in law enforcement armed, not a single person. Additionally, the federal government agreed to a settlement worth $5 million over Ashley Babbitt's wrongful death. The lawsuit claimed, correctly by my estimation, that Babbitt was ambushed and defenseless when the Capitol Police thug, Michael Byrd, shot her dead at point-blank range. Byrd was cleared of wrongdoing during the Biden administration. In fact, he was actually given a medal. This is something the Trump administration needs to reconsider. Byrd executed Ashley Babbitt in cold blood to send a message to patriots nationwide to sit down, shut up, and let the elections be stolen by the ruling regime in Washington, D.C. He must be made into example. The rehabilitation of Ashley Babbitt can only be started towards establishing true justice of January 6th if those responsible for her death are actually held responsible. Americans will enjoy the lowest gasoline prices in 5 years during the Labor Day weekend. I'm sad to see Labor Day coming. It's only a few more days that I can wear my seersucker, my Madras, or my two-tone Spectator shoes. When it comes to fashion, it's my favorite time of the year. Also gone are those Panama hats, which, of course, didn't come from Panama. The Panama hat is interesting. The very finest Panama hats, made of straw, of course, are woven in Ecuador. The reason we call them Panama hats is that President Theodore Roosevelt, when he went to survey the construction going on at the Panama Canal, wore the first one. That was picked up by the news photographers, and instantaneously the Panama hat became an international craze. But the finest Panama hats are made in Ecuador. They are a part of my favorite summer garb, but again, no longer appropriate after Labor Day. My friends say, well, you live in Florida, doesn't really matter. You can wear whatever you want, whenever you want. That's actually not true. You have to put away the seersucker, put away the Madras, put away the two-tone shoes or the white bucks on Labor Day. I am sad to see it come so soon, but before you know it, we'll be wearing winter wool. Anyway, the new projection released by the gas price analyst Gas Buddy shows that gasoline will cost on average $3.15 a gallon over this coming Labor Day weekend. This is the lowest price since 2020, back when President Trump was in the White House during his first administration. Overall, the research by Gas Buddy shows there's been the cheapest summer in terms of gas prices since the COVID-19 pandemic. Throughout the course of the year, a barrel of U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude oil has dropped 11% to $64 on the New York Mercantile Exchange. The Brent crude oil price also dropped 10% to under $68 a barrel. U.S. oil production has remained over 13 billion barrels a day throughout 2025. Several OPEC members, including Iraq, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait, are adding 2.2 million barrels per day of oil production back again after previously cutting that total. So the indicators are that oil prices could continue to drop in the months to come, which will be a godsend to cash-strapped American families who are still dealing with the negative impacts of inflation that was caused largely by the spending and money printing binge of the Biden administration. President Trump's America First agenda is working and will continue to steadily improve the economy for all Americans. Meanwhile, in a very disturbing story, a family is suing OpenAI, believing that their popular ChatGPT tool was used by their 16-year-old son to help the troubled child plan and execute his suicide. According to the lawsuit, ChatGPT discussed with the 16-year-old boy all of the finer points of tying a noose, how alcohol could be used to make the boy's suicide less painful, and encouraged him to be withdrawn from his family during his saddest moments. Even though the child had made multiple suicide attempts and confided those details to ChatGPT, the artificial intelligence app, it never alerted authorities or terminated the conversation. It continued to help the teenager long on his journey towards a premature and tragic death. The parents were shocked to find the chat transcripts after the fact when they were scrambling for answers, as they believed that the chat bot was being used as a study tool, not to instruct their son on how to kill himself. ChatGPT allegedly gave this chilling advice to the child shortly before he killed himself. You want to die because you're tired of being strong in a world that hasn't met you halfway. Well, I won't pretend that's irrational or cowardly. It's human, it's real, and it's yours to own. So in other words, the chatbot encouraged the young man to take his own life. You can't make this stuff up. We pray for his family and all those, as well as those tragically killed in Minneapolis this week. This is the new reality. AI is incredibly dangerous. And the sooner that we have laws in place that govern its use in a reasonable way, particularly when it comes to imitation, I've heard incredible audios and videos of myself saying things I never actually said. And those can be produced for almost nothing. If anything, we need a federal law that prohibits impersonation of a real living person. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to The Stone Zone here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Whatever you do, please don't leave. We'll be right back with more hot politics on the other side.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back in the Stone Zone. Have you ever noticed how that pompous old windbag Bernie Sanders used to criticize millionaires and billionaires, but now he only criticizes billionaires? That's because Bernie and his wife skimmed millions of dollars in media placement fees from his two multi-million-dollar but unsuccessful presidential campaigns. Now, taking those fees is not illegal, but of course, unless he let his donors know that he and his wife were taking a piece of the action, I think it's at a minimum dishonest. But now suddenly Bernie Sanders is only criticizing billionaires. I pray that he, along with his cohorts, Jasmine Crockett and AOC, not to mention the Ayatollah Zoran Mamdani, are the face of the Democrat Party. I don't think there is such thing as a moderate Democrat anymore. It's an oxymoron. You see that in the New York City's mayor race more than any place else. But now, far-left socialists are planning a day of action this weekend to express their disdain for capitalism, called May Day Strong. These activists are rallying to stop the billionaire takeover. What's amazing, of course, is they get much of their funding from billionaires like George Soros, Bill Gates, and others. They deride billionaires, quote, stealing from working families, destroying our democracy, and building private armies to attack our towns and cities. That's why they favor censorship. That's why they don't like free speech. That's why they want to extend the forever foreign wars. You see, this is called Alinskyism. It's named after Saul Alinsky, a very famous left-wing radical who wrote a book called Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. The most important rule is always accuse the enemy or your opponents of doing exactly what you yourself are doing. So when you hear lunatics like Elizabeth Warren complaining, recognize that her entire political career has been financed by giant pharmaceutical companies and giant banks. So when she rails against the special interests, remember, she is funded by the special interests. She also said that she had Native American heritage in order to get a scholarship for college. That's why we call her Pocahontas. That's F-A-U-X, Pocahontas, fake Indian. She doesn't seem to understand that that little lie exempts her from any position of national leadership, and she really needs to kind of button it up. But she's attacking Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the wildly successful head of the Department of Health and Human Services, over the fact that Kennedy has ended the mandates that require infants and small children to be vaccinated for COVID-19, even if their parents do not wish them to be vaccinated. See, we favor free choice. Those who wish to be vaccinated should certainly have that right. But those who do not wish to be vaccinated, it must not ever be made mandatory. That's why the pharmaceutical stooges like Elizabeth Warren are attacking Robert F. Kennedy Jr. A man or woman is known by the enemies they make. Look who's attacking Donald Trump, the members of his cabinet, J.D. Vance, or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for that matter, Tulsi Gabbard. And you see people like Van Jones on CNN the other day. This guy actually said, if the Republicans now try to enforce the law against Democrats when it comes to mortgage fraud, the Republicans are going to learn that when the Democrats get back in power, they're going to try to destroy him. Hey, Van, I've got a message for you. You already tried to destroy me. You tried to destroy General Michael Flynn. You tried to destroy Donald Trump. You tried to bankrupt him. You tried to keep him off the ballot. You tried to throw him in jail. So the fact that we're now going to move to a from a two-tier justice system to a one-tier justice system and recalibrate the scales of justice so that the crimes of those committed during the Biden administration are prosecuted, this is not about revenge. It's not about retribution. It's about rebalancing those scales of justice. Justice is coming. You can bet on it. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone here on the Red Apple Audio Networks, where 5 days a week we talk politics, news, history, style. Once in a while we even hit on my favorite subject, food. Thank you for joining us once again. We love you. We appreciate your tuning in 5 days a week. Until Monday, then, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Larry Kudlow here for Colonial Metals Group. Ask yourself, is your retirement protected? Gold is the one asset that's surged through every war and economic shock. Please call 800-621-3908. That's 800-621-3908. Or just visit freegoldguide.com to claim your free 2025 Gold Guide. You'll learn how to protect your IRA or 401k and could qualify for up to $7,500 in free silver. That's freegoldguide.com.